Fighting in Brawl is very similar to fighting in Melee. Since both games share so much of their design in common, this is expected. However, in every aspect of combat, Brawl is designed just a little bit differently to balance the game to a different result. By tweaking a few things, Brawl has shifted some of the focus away from the shuffle zone for a balance between a solid ground battle, shuffle zones, and air battles. Basically, by slowing down the game speed and taking away L canceling and removing wave sliding, Brawl achieves this balance. The reduced character movement speed in Brawl gives players more time to see and attack moving characters in the air. After all, you couldn't have much of an air battle if characters fell out of the sky really fast like they do in Melee. With more multi-jump characters, footstooling, and the new air dodge system, players can attack, get hit, dodge through, rebound off of, tech, and glide multiple times in the air to fight. I believe Sakurai liked his new air battle combat so much, he wanted even ground-focused characters and players to engage in the air at some point. So he made 3 changes from Melee. 1. He gave all characters more versatile and effective recoveries. 2. He greatly increased the auto ledge snap. And 3. He removed the highly effective ledge lock after rolling up from the ledge. So in Brawl, to put pressure on a recovering opponent, you can't just attack the stage or the ledge anymore. Chances are you must take to the air to pressure them. You can also expect more players to fight until someone is smashed and killed, as opposed to smashed and then edge guarded. In Brawl, because of the lower game speed and the reduced emphasis on fast attacks in the shuffle zone, instead of dashing or wave dashing back, the comparatively limited movement options force players to stay put on the ground, therefore increasing the potential for ground battles and footsies. Footsies is when 2 players move back and forth, typically on the ground, trying to stay just outside of their opponent's attack range while staying within counterattack range. With these changes and more solid ground moves that can push away shielding opponents or even trip on hit, players have a lot more incentive to stay on the ground and fight. With many creative and emergent ways to attack and smash, it's important to have an effective yet limited defensive system. Shielding, rolling, and spot dodging are all effective defensive moves in Brawl and Melee. Brawl tweaks the formula a bit more by making pivot grabbing, perfect shielding, air dodging, and stealth move negation cleaner and more effective than ever. All of these options have simple pros and cons. The hit stun systems in Brawl and Melee are actually very similar. There are hits that don't send you very far even at relatively high damage, and then there are hits that send you a set distance away even at low damages, but most of the hits are somewhere in between. In both games, after hitting the opponent, follow-ups are more common than combos. With smart playing, players can effectively press their advantage. The biggest difference between the 2 games is that in Melee, you generally need great speed and or great hit stun to successfully combo attacks. This speed is mostly achieved through L canceling, which is why many top level players use aerial moves for most of their game. While in Brawl, because players can air dodge out of their hit stun, the defending player has a choice to wait out the stun or air dodge at the mercy of their current trajectory. This system works hand in hand with the dynamic hit stun and DI system in Brawl. The end result is that the defending player can vary the direction they attempt to escape. By air dodging out of hit stun at low damages, players fall back to the ground near the attacker. Thus, characters can effectively follow up attacks without needing lots of speed or large amounts of hit stun. And when you factor in platforms, the variations become even greater. This way, slower characters and slower moves can be utilized. Brawl has many different unique movement techniques: footstooling, gliding, B-reversing, glide tossing, dakas, etc. None are perhaps as effective or widely used as Melee's wave sliding, but that doesn't mean Brawl has less techniques. I haven't taken a detailed count, so this myth is on hold. In many competitive games, it's easier to defend than attack. Simply hold the shield and smash and/or roll around and you're defending. However, this doesn't mean that defensive options have the advantage in Brawl. Just like in Melee, many defensive options are designed with pros and cons for balance. It's up to players to play smarter to overcome defensive options. This myth is busted. We know that special attacks and ground attacks aren't used very much by many top-level players in Melee. As long as you can use aerial attacks, pressure drop, land, and cancel half of the lag, you can get a lot of utility out of air attacks. However, aerial moves are so good that most of the high-level players' attacks are aerials. Unfortunately, this gives players a much smaller palette to work with to create their own playstyles. With less special and ground moves used, the combat is also less diverse. This myth is busted. L canceling gives players great speed, power, and versatility. Wave sliding, dashing, and landing gives players more ways to quickly and smoothly move around. To avoid speedy L canceling players, it helps to have a wave slide. To keep up with wave sliding players, it helps to use L canceling. Both of these techniques increase the pace of combat and put more stress on speed dexterity skills. As far as balance is concerned, these techniques essentially remove some of the cons of attacking and moving. It's no wonder that the metagame and the combat evolved to such a heavy use of aerials in the shuffle zone. When the balance of combat depends on moves that have pros and cons based on the dynamics of time and space, and you remove some of the cons of a few moves, expect the balance to shift. Yes and no. The point of removing L canceling was, in part, to limit the effectiveness of aerial pressure. But this design actually shifts the balance of combat more evenly between air and ground battles. So in Brawl, players can use more tilts and smashes in their normal playstyles. Players can also get more utility out of their special moves. For these reasons, Brawl's combat is more diverse. This myth is busted. We've finally come to the part in the discussion where we can look at the balance between Brawl and Melee in terms of the skill spectrum. And the first topic is skill barriers and skill curves. Because L canceling and wave sliding are so effective, I can't find a high-level Melee match without a significant amount of at least one of these techniques. You could say that to compete at a tournament level, you must use these techniques. Because these techniques require a significant amount of speed dexterity, acquiring these skills is a barrier. Overall, the pros have all overcome this barrier and enjoy competition with each other. The players who are the most affected are the new or beginning Melee players. Furthermore, many players who champion Melee's speed dexterity barrier seem to be younger players looking for something to give them an edge over their friends. In other words, such players want to spend time learning something and get a big payoff. On the other hand, Brawl has a much smoother skill curve. Every technique helps you a little. There's nothing in Brawl as sweeping, effective, and game-changing as Melee's L canceling. Furthermore, the slower speed and frame buffering help eliminate the skill barriers. Because Brawl doesn't have a significant skill barrier, its design is more open for characters with different skill profiles. In this way, you can pick a character that requires more of one skill than the other, and/or a character that stresses specific skills from the opponent. Increasing the game speed through L canceling and other advanced techniques affects the balance of the skill spectrum in Melee. The faster the pace, the more speed dexterity skills are stressed and the less control dexterity and timing skills are stressed. Melee has a much smaller range of timings overall than Brawl, and L canceling reduces this amount greatly. Not only does it cut the landing lag in half, but it makes shuffling so effective that other moves with lengthier timings are used less.